This is the second episode of a series of videos on forecasting transformative AI. In this video, I'll be discussing why transformative AI is a useful concept to think about and different definitions people have been giving over the years. In AGI Cotra's Forecasting Transformative AI with Biological Anchors report, transformative AI means software that would roughly have at least the same impacts on humanity's trajectory as the Industrial Revolution. This definition was actually inspired by a 2016 blog post from Holland Kanofsky saying almost the same, except that instead of Industrial Revolution, we have Agricultural or Industrial Revolution. It's actually the short definition for transformative AI in the blog post. In the long version, Holden lists 3 different ways in which we could say that AI was the cause of such a transition. In the first case, AI systems are capable of fulfilling all the necessary functions of human scientists, unaided by humans, in developing another technology that ultimately becomes widely credited with being the most significant driver of the transformative transition. I think unaided by humans is quite a high bar here. Since once we get AIs that can do science and develop new technologies by themselves, they'll probably also be able to make progress in AI research and self-improve. Another possibility would be that AI systems become capable of performing tasks that currently account for the majority of full-time jobs worldwide, and or over 50% of total world wages, unaided and for costs in the same range as what it would cost to employ humans. The important part here is unaided and for costs in the same range as what it would cost to employ humans. Since you could imagine a world where it's possible to automate a lot of knowledge work, but the actual inference costs or total compute available would be bottlenecks. For instance, think of how expensive it is to run GPT-4 today, and how OpenAI is raised limiting GPT-4 to 25 messages every 3 hours. The third possibility is if AI systems enable surveillance, autonomous weapons, or other AI-centric technology that becomes sufficiently advanced to be the most significant driver of a transformative transition. Here, my best guess for what this means would be that some authoritarian state would make humanity much more productive overall, or just AI is being used to do more AI research faster. That's what is meant by AI-centric here. In the cases that we've mentioned, it does make sense to actually talk about transformative AI models. In the first scenario, AIs are able to accelerate the development of some transformative technology. And in the second scenario, AIs are able to outperform humans in a wide array of jobs and fundamentally transform the economy. Now, if we go back to AGI Cotra's report, she actually describes in more depth what is meant by as profound as the Industrial Revolution. One way of measuring the impact of the Industrial Revolution is in terms of how it affects the gross world product, or GWP growth rate. GWP is basically the total global GDP, or the total market value of all the final goods and services produced by every country in the world. Since economies grow and more people are born every year, it actually makes more sense to look at the GWP growth rate, or in layman terms, how much more things is humanity producing every year. If we look at the GWP growth rate in the past 15 years, it's been oscillating between 3 and 6, ignoring the 2 recessions we've had in 2009 and 2020. And if we go back to the early 1900s and look at the compound annual growth rate, it's also been somewhat between 2% and 6% most of the years. But if we look at what happened between mid-1600s and mid-1800s, we see that the compound annual growth rates went from something like 0.1% to 1%, so a factor of 10, caused by the industrial and agricultural revolutions. That's also what AGI cares about in their report, something that roughly multiplies the GWP growth rate by 10. In practice, if we're at something like 2 to 3% a year, this would mean the GWP growth rate would need to grow all the way up to 20 to 30% a year. And if 30% a year doesn't mean anything to you, that would entail that GWP would actually double in 4 years. So roughly that would produce twice as much in 4 years, which is pretty crazy. In this scenario, it's worth noting that it would be much higher than what economists currently predict, but it's actually one of the most conservative scenarios for transformative AI. In Economic Growth under Transformative AI, the authors describe the Industrial Revolution as something where global growth rate goes from nearly 0 to 2% a year, but they also describe 2 other possibilities. The growth rate could keep increasing unboundedly, what they call a type 1 growth explosion, or the growth rate could approximate infinite output in finite time, which would happen if we get something like recursively self-improvement. To summarize, in this video, we've discussed multiple definitions for transformative AI, as described by AGI Kotra, Hoogland, and others. That's it for today. I'll see you tomorrow for the next video.